Good afternoon. I'm wrapped up all nice and warm here beside the frozen lake, which is where the children in our story are at the moment. Arthur and Maudie Brightstorm. They have found their father's skyship, although sadly they've still not found their father or found out what's happened. But they think they have a sneaking suspicion. Something isn't quite right. So I'm going to read chapter 23, The Plan. The last thing that we found out was that Arthur was insisting that they go over to Eudoravane's ship in the middle of the night. So let's find out what happens. Arthur pushed back the layers of quilts and swung his feet as soundlessly as possible out of his bunk. "What do you think we'll find?" Maudie whispered. "Some evidence that Eudoravane is behind this, that she sent the poisoned cakes over. We found Dad's ship, but it doesn't add up to anything that could work in court. This is our last chance to find out more. Unless we have more proof, she'll get away with it." "But shouldn't we wake up Harriet and Felicity and come up with a plan, Arthur?" "Of course not. Harriet has already ruled out going anywhere near the Victorious. They won't agree to going. We'll be back before they wake and they'll never know." "But we're wasting time. Come on." Parthena was sleeping on the end of Arthur's bunk. She opened one eye. "Stay here," Arthur whispered. Arthur took Harriet's camera and then hurried onto the deck, closely followed by Maudie. Outside, Tuyok was waiting for them. "You may walk softly, but your thoughts were loud enough to wake me." "Please don't try to stop us." "I see you are determined, so I'm here to offer my help." Arthur and Maudie rowed Tuyok across the snowplain on the outskirts of the lake towards the Victorious. The night was deathly still and quiet, apart from the creaks and groans of the frozen lake, and two young explorers on a great wolf outlined in moonlight riding across the expanse of the night. They reached the Victorious. "Thank you," Arthur thought, climbing down with Maudie. "I will wait for you," Tuyok said. They crept across the snow and towards the great hulk of wood and metal. Silently they climbed up the side ladder and tiptoed across deck to the hatch. Maudie found the catch and, with a careful click, it released. "She wouldn't suspect anyone would be mad enough to break in," she whispered. The sickly sweet smell of perfume wafted through the hatch. They both froze, but it was silent inside. "We've definitely got the right ship," Arthur said, swallowing to stop a sneeze. They started down the stairs. Maudie grabbed his arm. "Wait! How do we know which room to try?" "Exploring in the Third Age, Chapter 15. The basic layout of skyships is pretty much the same across all families. The sleeping quarters and stores will be on the lowest deck, galley and dining portside, the library and captain's room starboard." Maudie stared at him for a moment, impressed. Then she said, "Okay, let's start in the captain's room. If there's anything to be found, that's where it'll be." "My thoughts precisely." When they were sure all was still silent, they lit a candle to see their way, then continued down the steps into a hallway lavishly decorated with carved wooden panels. Lavishly. Arthur ran his fingers across twines and roses. "It's part of the Vane Explorer symbol," he whispered. Maudie curled her nostril and stuck out her tongue. "Vile explorers, more like." On the right-hand side, the first door was huge, with a large crystal doorknob. The letters EV were elegantly carved into the wood. Arthur put his ear close to the door to check for any noises beyond. He turned the handle. Inside, the floor felt soft underfoot. A pink fur rug was laid out at the entrance, and in the middle of the room stood a glass table with diamonds embedded in the edges. "Her initials are engraved on everything, Artie. It's as though she wants to put her stamp on the entire wide." Maudie picked up a pink paperweight with EV engraved in fancy letters. A teacup and saucer was laid out next to it, also embossed with EV, even the silver teaspoon. Maudie ran her hand across the bookshelves. Maybe she has a book on poisons. That could be evidence, right? Good thinking. You search them and I'll see what's in these boxes. They were of all shapes and sizes: pink pearl, crystal, silver. He carefully placed the candle on the shelf and opened the nearest to him. It was full of tiny pink shells. The next was full of pearls, another with a pungent pink spice. Pungent. It's a really nice word for something that really smells or tastes very strong. The pungent pink spice felt the same as Eudora's perfume. He stifled another sneeze quickly and put the lid on. Oh, look, here's one on toxic plants. Maybe she made notes on it or something. Arthur opened a silver small box. What was inside halted him. He stared for a moment. It was a silver locket. His hand reached for the locket around his neck. It was still there. Maud, this locket looks just like Dad's. It even has VE inscribed, not EV. She would have probably had the engraver killed for that mistake. No, I think it's meant to be like that. He traced his fingers across the silver engraving. The V and the E were delicately entwined. So that the line of the V wound 3 times around the stem of the E. Maudie, it's identical. There must have been 2, one for Violetta and one for Ernest. The cheek of the woman. She must have stolen this from our dad. He took the matching locket and looped it around his neck. Maudie let out a gasp that made him look up. You won't believe this. You found an engineering book you haven't read? He whispered sarcastically. This is not a time for jokes, Artie. She smiled and turned the large volume around. I do believe we have all the evidence we need. Who's the genius now? She crowed. Inside, the pages were glued together into a solid piece with a central rectangular cavity that held a set of finely crafted drawers. The fronts were covered with coloured paper and fitted with carved frames and silver knobs. Handwritten paper labels gave the names of different poisonous plants: castor oil, valerian, thorn apple, and deadly nightshade. Look! Maudie unfolded a piece of paper. It was a handwritten recipe for cakes with calculations and quantities of deadly nightshade added in a different ink. Excitement rippled through him. It must have been her. Let's take a photograph and get out of here. Lay it on the table beside the initialed casket. Here, place the candle there for light. And we'll tell the police where this is when we're all back in Luntown. Just let her try and explain this away. Arthur laid the book on the table, and Maudie took a photograph. And then something brushed past Arthur's foot and scurried in front of him, and he jolted and his arm bashed into the table and he knocked the teacup and it rattled to the side and Maudie lunged for it, but it was too late. It smashed on the wooden floor. They looked at each other with eyes as round as the moon. It was only a rat, Arthie. What's the matter with you? Maudie quickly blew out the candle and tugged him to the door. I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. Well, let's hope no one heard, she said, glaring at him. But as they reached the hallway, a clonk sounded below, and a sharp female voice called, Who's up there? With a panicked look, they ran for the stairs. And that's where I am pausing. You'll have to come back and hear Miss Copper read the next part of our story, Brightstorm. I'll see you very soon. Goodbye.